Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Art of Photography. My name is Ted Forbes, and today I just got back from vacation and I was trying to plan my episode, and I was particularly inspired by a few things that I want to share with you today. And I want to talk, ironically, the show is called The Art of Photography. We're going to talk about the art side of photography going into this. A couple things that inspired me. I just went on a vacation. I went to the Pacific Northwest of the United States, and I went to Portland, Oregon for a few days, some driving in between, and then also wound up in Seattle, Washington, and back to Portland. And thanks to all those who tweeted and emailed and wanted to get together and do meetups, and I apologize that this was just a vacation. It was a chance to see some old friends and relax a little bit, so I really didn't do that, but I will be back, I promise. Both of those cities are absolutely wonderful, as are all the locations in between, and I mean, my gosh, I really want to move to the Pacific Northwest. It really is beautiful. Despite everybody being cranky about what they were calling a heat wave, believe me, when you're from Texas, it was gorgeous. But anyway, one of the shows that I saw when I was up there, did a little bit of a busman's holiday towards the end, went to the Portland Art Museum and saw a wonderful show that I have the catalog for, this little brochure, called Two-Way Street. And this was the photographs of Garry Winogrand and Jonathan Brand. And if you're not familiar with Winogrand, he was an amazing photographer, typically referred to as a street photographer, although he hated that term, and quite frankly, I'm not a big fan of it either, but did a lot of social documentary types of stuff, and mostly shot in black and white. This show concentrated on the real classic period of Garry's work, of the late 1960s to early 1970s, so almost a 10-year period in there. Jonathan Brand was a friend of his, a wonderful photographer in his own right, and the mixture of the work of the two and showing that friendship, there was a lot of behind the scenes of Garry working and doing some of his famous images, and it's a really well done show. It runs at the Portland Art Museum until August 24th, 2010, and so go see that if you were in that area and would like to go check that out. Anyway, this show got me thinking a lot, and there's also the fact that I was on vacation, and those of you who watch the show regularly, I've made an announcement recently that I'm not doing the show full time. And I'm trying to, rather than jump right in, I'm trying to be more thoughtful about this, about how we approach the show and some of the things we're going to start doing coming up. And one thing that I think would be really nice to do is to get back into that art side of it a little bit. Now, in the last year, we've covered a lot of stuff on this show. We've covered, composition. We've covered, technical stuff like, developing color film. We've done photo history and photo lit. And there's been a lot of things that we've done that all kind of culminate up into where we are now, obviously, and where we want to take this going forward. And we'll still do a lot of those things. But at some point, I think I was inspired a lot by looking at Garry's work. Garry's work is not classically defined as, in these compositional forms like rule of thirds or rule of odds or anything like that. In Garry's own words, one of the things he always mentioned he was doing was he was out capturing life. He was not capturing a picture. He was out capturing expressions and people and, characters and this thing, basically life. And I think that that's really important, because at some point you do have to throw things out the door and go for it. Now, that's one type of photographer, and there are photographers that are more rooted in classical traditions as far as composition goes, people like Henri Cartier-Bresson. Winogrand's probably more on the end of the spectrum of people like Robert Frank, where it's really not about this beauty aesthetic, it's about something else. And that something else, I think, is really important, and it's something that I don't think we've done a lot of on this show. Now, truth be known, in the last, since we've done the show the last 5 years or so, I have had a day job and done this and put in a lot of work into this, and I will be the first to admit, between you and me, that my own photography has, not been on the front burner, let's say. And I don't think that it's suffered as a result, because I do a lot of studying about photography and research for the show, and I do a lot of talking about photography here. But one of my goals in leaving my day job and doing this full time is I do want to allow that to give me more time to take photographs and start working on the artist in me as well. And so, combining these two things, I'll talk about it in a minute, but what we're going to do is I have a project that's coming up, and I think it would be good to document on the show and actually take from concept to finish an entire idea for a small portfolio of work, which is what I've got in mind. So anyway, but all that to say, I don't want to stop covering some of the technical things that we've done. I don't want to stop talking about the photo history. I'd love to do a whole show on Garry Winogrand, so we'll do that coming up. I'm just mentioning him today because of this exhibition that I saw, but I think just being inspired by this and getting out there. A lot of times, and I think this particularly manifested itself when we were talking about color film development and processing, I get a lot of people who are really into this that watch the show, And they start carefully asking a lot of questions. And as soon as I can figure this out, and like, for instance, the heating element to get the chemicals up to the right temperature, all this to say, I think there's something to be said for being that kid who wakes up on Christmas morning and just rips into packages and doesn't read directions and crashes the helicopter and starts breaking things. At some point, I think you just have to get out there and do it. And so I think one of the things I'm going to try and do with the show as we move into the fall a little bit, particularly with this project, is find ways that we can incorporate the more of the doing and less of the study per se, but do it in this video type format. So that is some of the things we have coming up. So I want to talk for just a second about this project that I've got coming up and that we'll be documenting a little bit as we move into the fall. And what I hope to accomplish with this is, like I said, we're still going to do a lot of the same stuff that we do on the show as far as technique, as far as photo history and stuff go, but I want to introduce this as an element of it. And I think the reason is because ironically calling this show The Art of Photography, we haven't really dealt with, what goes into art necessarily. For instance, what's an artist statement? How do you write one? How's that different than a biography? How do you talk about your work? How do you come up with a concept and see something through from start to finish? From just something in the head to figuring out what technique you're going to use to accomplish this, to the final print, to the final display. And so I hope that this pushes me into an area that I haven't been in a long time. And I think it'll be interesting for you guys as well to think about these things. And if you're so inclined, I wish you would work along and kind of work on some of these things as I'm doing mine. So anyway, the brief here on this is the studio that I do all these shows in. I have lived in this building for about 10 years. Well, the building turns 100. It's an old cotton gin. And it turns 100 years old this year. And one of the things that we're going to do is a kind of a celebration to that. There's a large art gallery in the lobby. And we're going to do an art show basically from a lot of the residents who live here who are in fact artists. There's another photographer at least, probably 2 or 3. Myself, there's people who paint, anyway, it's going to be a really interesting celebration. And I think it's interesting too, of being, a big history fan that I am, being in a place and time 100 years later, that started getting my mind thinking about what I would like to do for the show. And so what I think I want to do, and this could change, but this is kind of my just rough sketch as it is, but I would like to do portraits of people who live in the building, as many people as I can, and try to find a way to bring that around into the history of the building and what that means and where we are in that lineage. And so I'm not real sure, maybe that is supplemented by additional photographs or something of that nature. But anyway, that's where I am so far on this. And so it's a really basic concept. And so what we'll do is moving down the road, I want to talk about artist statements a little bit too. Artist statements, for me personally, I think for photography, I work in a lot of different styles and mediums a lot of times, and so I will tend to prefer to write artist statements based on a body of work. So I'll write an artist statement to this, and I'll take you guys through the process and show you what all is involved with that, how that's different than a biography, how to keep that from being too corny sounding, and how, why it's important to do. And then we'll actually talk about, sketching out the ideas, the actual process of shooting people, what medium I decide to go with, most likely film on this. Because I would like to do my own darkroom prints and make it just a real labor of love that came from within, because we're celebrating, the history of the building. So anyway, those are my basic ideas, just off the top of my head on that. But I'll show you the behind the scenes on how we're going to actually film those, or actually get them photographed, and then do the printing, and then actual framing display, and we'll do it from start to finish, so you'll see the whole idea. So expect these to be sprinkled in as we're moving into the fall here. That's one thing we're going to work on. So anyway, just a little bit of an intro to getting into the art of things. And as I said, I've been out of town for the last week, and actually a little over a week, and little R&R to recoup. And I'm excited about being back, and so we're going to do more shows. And I know people have wanted more than one show a week, and we will get back to that, I promise. And it's all part of moving forward. So anyway, once again, guys, this has been another episode of The Art of Photography. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next time. Later.